Hello everyone, welcome to the Eurasian Research Institute seminar session. So this seminar session will look at spatial analysis of demographic change in Kazakhstan since 1979. The seminar refers to the paper I'm currently working on, so hopefully I'll finish it in a week or so and send it to a journal. The research covers the spatial demographic change in Kazakhstan since 1979, so 40 years. It's based on data for each decade since 1979. So first I'd like to give you some understanding of the spatial demography. It's an interdisciplinary study that's related to geography, demography, human geography, spatial economics, and some other related fields. So basically it involves data analysis, spatial statistics of demographic change with reference to geographic data. Spatial demography was largely developed in the US due to the fact that US has very good tradition of spatial data records since long ago. But there's been some developments in Europe since recently too. So here you can see some textbooks on spatial demography. I'd like to mention some of the motivations that inspired me to do this research. So here you can see some examples of spatial representation of demographic data. So this is Italy. Half of the population live in spotted areas. Same here for the US. The darker regions are the areas where half of the population of the country live. So here we can see Turkey. So here the population of Turkey is divided into 4 equal parts. So each part here of Turkey would represent 1/4 of the population of Turkey. Here we can see the population density map for Germany, and here we can see the same kind of map that we saw for Turkey here. So here the population of Russia is divided into 3 equal parts. So looking at this map, we can understand that most part of Russia is very sparsely populated, and 2/3 of the population is concentrated in relatively small area located in the European part of Russia. Now the interesting thing here is that I couldn't find any similar map for Kazakhstan, so I started to wonder if there's enough data to construct some similar maps for Kazakhstan, and I came up with this. So this is based on my research. So here we can see Kazakhstan divided into 2 equal parts in terms of population. So half of the population live in red part, and the rest of the population live in blue part. Here on the right side we can see another 50% population split. Here we can see that half of the population live in 25 different cities. So here are the cities painted in yellow, and all other parts of Kazakhstan in blue have only 50% of the population. But these are only some by parts of the research. So all the data used in this research are from open source data. So over 90% of all data used in this research come from these 3 sources here, which include census for 1999 and 2009. Then there's statistical publications of the Committee on Statistics called Regions of Kazakhstan that includes lots of data with geographic references, and there's another source of data very important here. It's called demographic yearbooks. Some small proportion of data is taken from current statistical records, and some very insignificant part of the data is taken from this source here called citypopulation.de. So the main contribution of this paper is that this is the first research done for Kazakhstan based on NUTS-3 level of territorial desegregation. NUTS stands for nomenclature of it's nomenclature of territorial units for statistics. So this would be NUTS-2 level, and this is NUTS-3 level. There are a bunch of research done on NUTS-2, but there's no previous research done on NUTS-3 level. In fact, these data sources contain huge amount of geodemographic data. So it includes population change here, population density, economic data, some gender statistics, data on urbanization, and many other types of data. So I'm planning to write a series of papers based on this on these sources of data. The major problem here, however, is that these data are very difficult to process. It takes huge amount of efforts. I spent months on working on just systematizing these data so that I could use them in Excel and QGIS. So an important detail here to mention is that this NUTS-3 level is equal to what we see here in Germany. This is the same NUTS-3 level, and this is also NUTS-3 level. So these are comparable data. So what it does for us is that they provide valuable information about with geographic reference. In this case, we have population data with very good resolution with geographic references. Here we have data for 1979 to 1989, so this is the last decade of the existence of the USSR. So as we can see here, there's population growth overall, slightly about 10% population growth, which is consistent with the general population growth with in the USSR during this period. So as we can see here, population growth is distributed more or less equally throughout the territory of Kazakhstan. There's growing population in the north and in the south, slightly more in the south, and there are more districts with population decline and slightly more districts with population decline in the northern half of the country. Now, if you look carefully, we can note that these areas with significant population growth, these are urban areas. So these suggest that there has been a significant amount of urbanization due to internal migration from rural areas to larger cities. So this is absolute population change by districts of Kazakhstan. So here dark red corresponds to large population decrease over 10,000 people. This is significant amount of population decrease between 10 and 5,000 people. This is small decrease below 5 This is a small decrease below 5,000. This is from 5,000 to 10,000, and this is a large population decrease, over 10,000 people. So this is here the same data in relative terms. So this is population change between 1979 to 1989, but measured in percentage terms. So as we can see here, the information is consistent to what we see previously here in absolute population change, more or less equal distribution of growing and declining districts of Kazakhstan. Slightly more population decline over in the northern half of the country. In particular, we can know that more severe cases of population decline are those with are in those districts that have common border with Russia. This map here is for 1989 to 1999. So as we can see here, there's huge difference compared to what we saw for 1979 to 1989. So there's huge population decline in most parts of the country. The overall decline was about 7.7%, and there was decline in 132 districts out of 173. The main reason for such a severe population decline is, of course, the collapse of the Soviet Union and resulting outmigration of the population, mostly Slavic population, to other parts of the USSR. Then the severe economic crisis of the 1990s also had certain negative effect on the population growth in Kazakhstan. Most severe cases of population decline are in the northern part of the country, east and center, and some parts of even southern parts of Kazakhstan. And there's more moderate but still negative decline in the western part of the country. Now important thing here is that these three areas are the main centers of population growth. Interestingly, these are not continuous areas of population growth. There's separation in Jumbo region, despite the fact that Jumbo region is very similar in many terms to neighboring Almaty region and South Kazakhstan region. And there's a southwestern part of the country with significant population increase also. We can see here few exceptions in the northern half of the country. These are Aktobe city, and this is Astana, that became capital in 1997. So this is the main reason that explains huge population growth in this particular area. And this is one of the oil-rich districts of Kazakhstan. So the same data here shown in relative terms. Again, we can see here the three main centers of population growth separated from each other, and the rest of the country with severe population decline mostly. Then in 1999 to 2009, we can see an overall population recovery, despite the fact that most parts of the country are still in population decline. So there's been an overall population growth of more than 5%, 120 districts with population decline, but hence there's relatively small number of districts with significant population growth. Again, we can note here that these are the main population drivers, the main three centers of population growth. One here is located around the city of Almaty, southern part of Almaty region, and this is southern Kazakhstan. Now it's Turkestan region, and here's the southwest, the oil-rich part of Kazakhstan. Here we can see significant population growth in the capital city, which at that time was called Astana, and here it is Kokshetau city, and this is Pavlodar city, and this is Semey, and Aktobe, and Oral city. So as we can see here, apart from these main three population centers, there's some population growth in urban areas in the northern part of Kazakhstan. This is the same population data for 1999 to 2009 in relative terms. So the same interpretation here. Small population growth in some parts of the country, but mostly population decline. There's been very insignificant population growth during the last decade of our analysis from 2009 to 2019. So in total, it's about 16.6%. So this would be well over 1% population growth each year during this decade. In terms of territories, we can see almost equal number of districts with population decline and population growth. However, the growth is overwhelming. So again, we can see here that the main population centers here are still present. There's continuous growth in the southern half of the country, but the main three areas have more rampant population growth, more significant population growth than other areas of the other country. And there's still very high urbanization in urban areas in the northern parts of the country, and you can see here population growth, significant population growth in most of the urban areas in the northern parts. The urbanization is, if we take urbanization here, it mostly applies to the southern region of Kazakhstan. The main drivers of the population here, actually, the main three cities, these are Almaty and Nur-Sultan and Shymkent, accounted for more than 1/3 of the population growth. This is the relative case of population growth measured in percentage terms. So an interesting thing here is that there's very stark difference between decline and population growth. We can see very few cases of moderate population scenarios here. We can see more severe cases or very significant growth here. There are very few cases of moderate population growth. And again, we can see here that the main population growth centers, the main three population growth centers show very high population growth during 2009 and 2019. This map here shows the absolute population change during the whole period of the study from 1979 to 2019, and we can see here that in most parts of the country there's population decline, but despite this fact, we can say that there's been significant population growth. In overall terms, during this period, we have seen 25% of population growth. So it means that here that these few areas with population growth account for most part of the population growth for this period. So this is in relative terms, and this is also relative population growth shown here in two colors. So this would be a population growth above net. So the blue areas here are the districts with population growth or decline below the national average rate. That would be about 25%. And the red ones are the districts with faster than 25% population growth. So here we can clearly see the main three population growth centers. So um, here's this southeast and south and southwest of the country. So summarizing the spatial demographic effects between 1979 to 2019, we can mention some of the statements describing the main population trends. And overall, we can see that there's been population growth during the 4 decades from 1979, despite some population declines in 1990s, for example. And there have been some areas with very high population growth, as we have mentioned here. The main population centers, the main population growth centers are these areas. One is a bit in the southeastern part of the country, and the second one is here, and the third one is here. However, there has also been some population growth in other parts of the country. In northern parts of the country, there's population growth mainly in districts with significant urban population. So these are all districts with significant urban population. And of course, the capital city shows one of the highest population growth rates. Another important process that we have seen between 1979 to 2019 is that there's rapid urbanization. Actually, the speed of the urbanization process is way much higher than the overall population growth. So therefore, we can see faster population growth rates in the main largest 3 cities of Kazakhstan: Almaty, Shymkent, and Nur-Sultan. And finally, perhaps the most important spatial demographic implication from this study is that there's an overall concentration of population, meaning that the certain parts of the country are accumulating more and more population, and the other parts of the country are losing most of their population over time. So this process over time leads to the loss of uniformity of the population distribution, with population density increasing in particular areas of the country and declining population densities in other parts of the country. So in general, we can identify 3 main centers of population growth in the southeast, south, and southwest of parts of the country. And to a lesser extent, we can also relate it to the city of Aktobe and surrounding regions, and to the city of Nur-Sultan and its surroundings. To a lesser extent, it relates also to other urban areas in the northern parts of the country. So these are the main conclusions of the paper. Certainly there will be more papers, there will be more research on this using the data that we have. And thank you for listening.